So welcome, 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 welcome. And again, I'd love it if you would just drop a comment in the chat box or in the comments box, whichever platform you're joining me on, just to say hello. And I'd love to know if you are already a practicing holistic healer. So if you do nutrition coaching or herbal coaching, or if you're a naturopath, I would love to know, just drop a comment as to what credentials you have, what training you're using right now. That will help me to tailor make this presentation to meet your needs a little bit more effectively. Otherwise, I'm going to teach to the lowest common denominator, which is nobody here knows anything at all, right? So if you want me to dive deeper, you got to give me a little bit of information here. Again, as we go through today, I'm going to keep an eye on all the comments and chats that are going on, which means I'm looking away from the camera a fair amount, for which I apologize. So feel free to comment and interact with me. You'll get more out of me if you play with me in my sandbox, I promise. When I figured out how to use iridology, particularly constitutional iridology, it helped me to learn how to integrate everything I already knew. It helped me to integrate my nutrition training. It helped me to integrate my herbology training, flower essences, aromatherapy. It helped me to tie it all together. And that made the world of difference, because with iridology, we see our clients' inherent potentials. We see where their genetic strengths and weaknesses are. When we understand that and we layer that up with our clients' current health concerns, it helps us to understand why they have those health concerns, and it helps us to understand what questions to ask to get the deeper information we need to give them the best information we can. So we've got a nutrition coach with us who uses dry and live blood cell analysis. Excellent. And she's just newly interested in iridology. Anne, good to have you with us. Melody says she's a reflexologist. She's also studying iridology with Dr. Pesic, and that's great. She's a health coach. Excellent. And Valerie, welcome to the webinar. You know, when I do iridology, the way I'm going to share some basics with you today, I don't even use an intake form. My clients sign an informed consent form so they know the scope of my practice and what I can do with them. But I don't actually give them an intake form. I use the eyes, I use the symptoms as my intake to guide the questions that I need to ask my client. So when we are looking at this, iridology helps me to make faster assessments, helps me to be much more accurate, and it helps me to build faster and deeper rapport because I am asking questions directly related to my client's needs. I'm not doing a shotgun pattern of generic questions that I ask everybody. And again, it eliminates the need for an intake form, which saves us time. I've never had a client complain about not having to fill out a form. Right? Instead, they love the idea that I'm going to have a conversation with them, that I'm going to dive deep to understand who they are and how they're put together. Let's look at some eyes now. Now, these are the eyes of a male client. He was just over 40 years old when we started working together. These pictures were taken with an 8-megapixel digital camera. And I want you to have a really good look at these photos. These were taken in 2015. Now, when people ask me, I'm going to do a side trip here for you. People ask me, should I buy an iriscope? And my answer is absolutely not. An iriscope is not the same as an iridology camera. An iriscope is a small device that you hold up to the eye, and it typically gives you a photo or an image with a 2 to 8 megapixel resolution. This is what you get. Was done actually with an iridology camera, an older one, that only had an 8-megapixel. There is an absolute lack of definition here. We cannot see much of what we need to see because these photos do not have a high enough resolution. Now, burn these into your memory because I want to show you these same eyes taken 18 months later, but with a 24-megapixel camera that used LED lighting instead of incandescent lighting. Isn't that a radical difference? Now, some of you who might have some old Jensenian training under your belt might say, as we compare the old photo to the new photo, you might be inclined to say, wow, he did a lot of cleansing. And my answer is no, he actually didn't. He kind of is an on again, off again kind of holistic guy. You know, he'll go for a length of time taking supplements and eating really clean, and then he falls off the wagon and he's back to being sloppy with things. What we see here, though, is we know these are a different camera, right? We've got different skin tones, which means we had different lighting. We've got different light artifacts, which means we've got different lighting. And that all begs the question of how different is the camera and what is the difference we see? Do you see with the 8 megapixels, we see shaded areas here. We would call these rarefied areas. But suddenly when we have 24 megapixels, and we see amazingly more definition, we see that these areas, yes, there is rarefaction, but there is also this black pigment that is splattered over the surface. So this is not really all about, oh my goodness, he did a cleanse at all. Not at all. We've just changed our technology. So often when we see photos that are posted online and that are claimed to be before and after photos, we need to assess those photos very critically. We need to determine, are the skin tones the same? Is the sclera color the same? Is the eye color, do we have the exact same markings? Some people post before and after photos that are not even the same eye, which means that's an invalid comparison. Do you agree that if you're posting a left eye and a right eye, or my eye and Sally's eye, that those are invalid before and after comparisons? If you agree that that's invalid, give me a 1 in the comments box. So as we see this, then we want to be aware of the fact that technology makes a huge difference, And so when people are claiming before and after, we can't use that. If it's different cameras, different lighting makes all the difference in the world. Thank you, Barbara. I'm glad you agree with me. I appreciate that. So what is the better question to ask? The better question isn't, is there a before and after, and things like that. It's actually, what changes can we see in irides, and what do those changes mean? This is a really important question. I've been an iridologist for 4 decades now. The first 10 of those were as a Jensenian North American iridologist. And I was actually about ready to quit doing iridology. I'd practiced for 10 years. I was frustrated. I had been told that the eyes would change color if we did a cleanse, that if we did the right supplements, we would see healing lines, that we would see all of these changes. I had books that showed before and after photos, and I later learned that the authors had used color filters to alter the appearance of the eyes. And I also learned that in some cases, they did not even use the same person's eye. They found eyes that were similar and said, here's the before, here's the after, and again, invalid. So that was actually when the opportunity arose for me to learn constitutional iridology. And it just made so much more sense. It really resonated with me. So are you ready to learn how constitutional iridology teaches about eye changes? If you are, give me a 2 in the comments box. You ready? I want to see a 2. Yeah. Thank you, Melody. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate that. So what do we know for sure? We know that pigment may become acquired or become more dense. So when we are looking at pigment, this is what we see. So these again are the same person's eye. These cameras were both handheld. This was a print film camera. This is a 24 megapixel LED lighted digital camera. And we can see as we match up this with this and this with this, and we go all the way around and we see this is hiding behind here and this is here. This is the same eye, the same gap is here. The same little fiber that's going sideways is here. These are the same eye. So we note the landmarks. We know these are the same. Now, I want you to notice first off that our pupils are different sizes. Right now, when we've got a large pupil, the fibers in the eye, or the trabeculae as they are called, get compressed into a smaller area. So think of an accordion that has been squished. When the pupil is smaller, the accordion gets stretched out, so the fibers become straighter. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a makes sense. And Faith and Barbara, thank you for giving me those twos. I appreciate that. Does it make sense that as the pupil gets bigger, these fibers get compressed? Yes, it does. Excellent. And as the pupil gets smaller, they get stretched out. So when we look at that, first off, can you see how it changes how the width of things looks, that it makes things look narrower? As a Jensenian, we would have said, oh, healing, healing, healing. Oh, this is healing. No, it's change in tech that changes the pupil size. Dimmer light, brighter light. Dimmer light means larger pupil, brighter light means smaller pupil. Got it? All right. So we also see that the reason things look like they've shifted a little bit, like sideways and rotated, is because these cameras are both handheld, right? They're not on a stand, they're totally handheld. And that meant, you know, if I was off by a bit, well, I needed this shows you that I was off by a bit, all right? Notice that this image, which was done when this fellow was in his mid 40s, and this one that was done in his early 60s, notice how this pigment has accumulated. It is not in the older photo. It is in the newer photo. This is what we mean by accumulation. Now, this is my husband. I tend to take very good care of him. I do want him around for a lot more years. So we've got a very clean diet. We've got an active lifestyle. He takes his supplements faithfully, regularly. And yet, even with that, what we see is he has accumulated pigment. What we know is pigment does not disperse. This pigment looks a little bit lighter, and that is because of the difference in the color of the light itself. That is also in part because of the difference of the brightness of the light. The brighter the light, the more washed out the color will look. Also, the color tone of the light. Incandescent is more yellow, LED is more blue. That will completely alter the color and the way the pigment looks dense or not dense. So that's an important note as well. What we really want to focus on here, though, is that 40 odd or 20 odd years ago, he didn't have the pigment down here. He now has the pigment here. So what does that tell us? It tells us that inherently, something is programmed to happen. And with this pigment color, it suggests that maybe some questions about the liver coming up, not because of anything he's done. Again, super clean diet, no alcohol, no illicit drugs, almost no medications, right? Lots of good herbs, lots of good vitamins and minerals, lots of good food, active lifestyle. No reason that his liver should be stressed out. But this is suggesting that with time, his liver is programmed to have some issues. So as we see this pigment come up, we watch particularly what are his liver symptoms. Is anything happening that needs to be addressed? And actually, we've got him on a bit of a preventive program because we do not want this to ever become symptomatic. We want this only and ever to be a red flag that says, pay attention, right? So this is what we work with, is we watch the pigment surface. And as it surfaces, we know as it begins to form, we know that we need to pay attention to that area. We are not going to be able to do anything to cleanse this out, nor to cleanse out any of the orange and yellow pigment, because this orange and yellow is his genetic inheritance. We're not changing his genetic structure here. Here again, we have these eyes. Let's look for landmarks. A particular one is this little fiber coming down here, which is right here. We have a tiny little gap right here, which is also right here. So as we look at and we see, okay, I'm satisfied that these are the same eye. We've got this little fiber configuration right here, and we've got it right here. Notice what has happened over the years. These photos were taken about 20 years apart. These are one of our sons, and we've got pigment that has developed. We've got more pigment that has developed. See this little mark here? There's no pigment down here, but see, we've got one here. This pigment would be right here. Do you see how we've got pigments that have accumulated again? So as we see this, and we know these are brown pigments, it suggests that there may be, again, some predisposition to some liver. And I got to tell you, liver runs hot and heavy in my bloodline. If you were to see my eyes, you would see all kinds of liver indications. There's a genetic liver issue that runs through the family that I have, that some of my kids have. I don't remember if this son has it or not. And it's nothing serious, it just is inconvenient. But what we see is he has acquired these pigments, and what they tell us is that liver wants to potentially cause problems, and it tells us which organs the liver wants to cause problems in. Now, this young man did go through a rough patch in his life. He got into some pretty heavy alcohol, and then he got his life straightened around. And now he's a Red Seal chef, and his delight is catering to small parties. And for those parties, he does organic, locally sourced, from scratch. There's nothing prepackaged, nothing commercially grown if he can avoid it. And so he's become very health conscious. As he was getting his Red Seal, he would come home from school and he'd say, "Mom, they taught us this about nutrition, but that's not what you teach." And I said, "No. So you need to give them back what they've taught you on an exam, but you know better," right? So he's doing a lot of great things to support his health now. In constitutional iridology, we are not going to nitpick every individual pigment placement. We are only going to look first off at the color of the pigment, because that tells us which organ is likely to be struggling, which one is going to need loving attention. And then we know where these are to know which organs may be affected, and we ask questions to find out if those organs are being affected. Perhaps those organs may need some support too, but our real key is in supporting the organ that originated the pigment color. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a 1 in the comments box. Another change that we sometimes see is the lipemic diathesis. So when we're looking at the lipemic diathesis, that is this white ring. This is actually not in the iris, this is in the cornea. And this ring tells us that the liver may not be handling carbohydrates properly, which can lead to, or can give us information about how this person balances their blood sugars, about their predisposition towards cholesterol and triglyceride issues. If we see this developing, because you're almost never born with this. I've never seen a child with this. If we see this developing, thank you, Amanda, for saying that last slide made sense. I appreciate that. If we see this developing in someone who's under the age of 20, we panic yesterday. We work hard because it means things are not going the right direction. If we see it in people under 30, we're still going to get in there and really get our hands dirty and get some work done because something is seriously out of balance. If we see it developing in someone over 60, we tend to not be as concerned. It could just be natural aging of the cornea. And in that age bracket between 30 and 60, we want to be addressing diet, lifestyle, gland or organ support. We need to be getting in there and doing some revamping, right? And so we're never going to dissolve this. It is always going to be there. If it continues to develop and it gets wider and whiter, more opaque, then we know that we've got to work harder to support the body, nurture it along, and help it do better. We can halt its progress, and that would be our ultimate goal, is to halt the progress, and that is an indication that we are doing the right things to support the body and to reverse, to stop the further deterioration that goes on in the body. Another thing that we see that is very dynamic is the pupil may change its shape. The pupil shape reflects spinal alignment. So when a pupil is not round, it suggests there are subluxations or misalignments in the spine. When we see where it's flattened, we know where the subluxations are. And if you have chiropractic skills, or if you do Dorn therapy or any other spinal alignment therapy, you can use this to confirm what you see on your manual assessments, right? When we see these flattenings, so these are long-standing subluxations. These are subluxations that have been there for a long time, and they have altered the nerve feed in the body, which is what the concern is with subluxations, correct? That it's changing that nerve feed from the brain to the body and from the body back to the brain. So when the subluxations are corrected, and I don't mean one trip to the chiropractor because that rarely will hold the correction, but when the person is doing the right other therapies as well to balance the muscles and help the spine to hold properly, we will eventually see the pupil become round again. All right, so it's a very dynamic indicator, very dynamic. It takes a lot of work, and it is the kind of thing that we need to be very vigilant about. It's one of the reasons why I really encourage my people to do chiropractic, do physiotherapy, do massage, do the exercises that the various practitioners will give to help rebalance the muscles and support the spine properly. Other changes that we see that are very dynamic. We're looking at blood vessels. Now, we've seen this eye before. This is my husband's eye. In 1997, he had this very thick blood vessel right here. And I want you to notice also this little jag right here. Different camera, different lighting. March 2018, we're looking for that jag. Here's that jag right here. This has gotten quite a bit thicker. This suggests changes in the circulation, not just in the eye, but in the adjacent organs in the iris. Notice though that this line, this blood vessel, has become much thinner, much thinner. And so that means that whatever congestion this was speaking of has gotten less. There's less congestion in that. So we've got a bit of an overlap there. We need to ask a lot of questions to find out what in heaven's name is going on. LaDonna, good to see you on the webinar. Thanks for being there. All right. So the blood vessels in the sclera change. We know that, right? If you've ever had a good hard cry and then gone and looked in the mirror, you've seen the blood vessels in your eyes. And if you've got to go out and be seen in public, you're going, oh my goodness, how do I calm this down quickly? Give it an hour or two, and that irritation has gone away, the blood vessels calm down, and nobody is the wiser, right? So when we're doing photos for the eyes, we don't necessarily shoot photos at every appointment, right? We'll shoot photos particularly for the irides, about once every 2 or 3 years to monitor for pigment. If we've seen things in the sclera that are attention getters, then we are going to want to shoot sclera photos more frequently, right? Because we want to monitor those changes. Coming down here, you'll see that this blood vessel right here is not very thick. It's very thick here. I've watched this one form over the years, and this one has my undivided attention because this suggests some serious congestion happening in the body with the circulation, which is going to compromise organ function. And we are working with this constantly to uncongest that circulation, support that organ, and help this all become a non-issue. Ways that irides do not change. Now, this is really important. This is really important. When I first learned Jensenian iridology, we were taught that these fibers inside this kind of a shape, we call this a lacuna, were healing signs, that these fibers had developed because this was healing. We now know that is not correct. What we know is the eye is made up of layers of fibers. And what we are looking at with this shape is the very top layer of fiber is like this. And when we see these lines underneath it, we are simply, my hands don't work that way. There we go. We are looking at the fibers that are one layer down or two layers down in the eye. These fibers have always been there. They didn't just magically appear. We do not grow new fibers in our eyes. Okay, so that is one way these do not change. We do not have healing lines appear. Again, way back when I first started in iridology, we were taught that lacunae would change shape. Going back to our accordion analogy, it's not, the lacunae don't change shape in and of themselves. They don't change shape because we've done a diet or we've done the herbal work or anything like that. The lacunae will look like they're changing shape based on whether the accordion is compressed or the accordion is stretched out. So I like to think of these as being like a balloon. The balloon is shaped like this, but if we were to pull on the sides of the balloon, we change the shape of the balloon, but we haven't changed the size of the balloon. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, I'd like to see balloon in the comments, if that makes sense. So we know that lacunae do not change size. They can have it look like their shape has changed, but that is strictly based on that accordion analogy. It's based on whether the fibers are stretched, or whether they're compressed. Thank you, Jeanette, for letting me know that that balloon analogy makes sense here. Wonderful. I'm glad that worked for you. So lacunae don't get smaller. Lacunae are inherited markings from the generations that have gone before that teach us there is a genetic predisposition to a potential challenge in that organ where that lacunae is sitting. Alrighty, and so these aren't going to go away. Thank you, Tara, and Barbara, for letting me know that that balloon analogy worked for you. Excellent, excellent. All right, so love to know if you've got any questions about anything we've talked about here. And if you do have a question about anything we've talked about, I would love to see that in the comments box. And I'm just going to pop in and literally spend like 2 minutes giving you a little tickler of what is coming up. The Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course is the only live online, fully mentored iridology program to help holistic practitioners like you do iridology right in your sessions so that you can actually create your client programs right in your time with your clients. No more of this going off and spending hours of your own time to create programs, hours of your own time that you don't get paid for, by the way, unless you are charging hundreds of dollars for an appointment, right? And so the purpose of this is to save you time, to help you actually be more precise in your client work, to help you build deeper and faster rapport with your clients. And LaDonna says balloon analogy, good, and definitely agree. Thank you so much, LaDonna. And it's about creating long-term relationships. When we do iridology the way I teach it, we don't, and this is going to be very graphic, vomit out everything we see in the eyes in one session. Because when we do, that overwhelms our clients. Because if we vomit out this long list of markers we see that may or may not have anything to do with their current symptoms, and then we follow that up with an equally large vomiting session of everything they need to do to be healthy, the clients cannot do it all. They get overwhelmed. They don't know where to begin. And guess what? They're never going to come back because they can't be successful. So the way I teach iridology is to help you understand how iridology correlates to their symptoms, the information iridology can give you, how it teaches you what questions to ask, so that you can create very succinct, very precise, very tight programs to take your client from where they are now up one step in their wellness, to take care of the maybe one key symptom they're experiencing, right? Get to the root of that symptom, help them experience that. And when they've experienced that improvement and they were successful in following your program, they want to keep coming back because they can do what you've told them to do, what you've taught them to do. They get the results you said they would get, and they want to keep coming back because they love being able to do this successfully. All right. So when we do that, it creates long-term retention of your clients. I've got clients that have been with me for 39 years. I've got third generation clients where I worked with the woman who is now the grandma when she was having her children, and now I'm working with the children of those children. Right. And that's what happens when we create manageable programs for clients. They trust you. Now, my clients don't necessarily come in every month for the rest of their lives. I'll see them 4 or 5 times to maybe 6 times to get them really going in the right direction. And then they're good for a few years. And as their body starts to shift, they're getting older, things are changing, they will come back when they need to have things adjusted, and we'll see them 3 or 4 or 5 times again at 1-month intervals, usually get them to a new level, working with their body as it has aged. Then they're good for a few more years, and then they cycle back. How would that feel to have clients that would work with you for several appointments and then come back years later and send their friends in to see you? That is the story of my practice. And I love it. I love it. It just works so well. So the goal of this course, again, is to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it confidently so you can integrate it with what you already know. We spend time in the course not just doing iridology, but practicing iris assessments, practicing what questions to ask based on the eyes and the case history, and then practicing what would you do for the program here? How would you develop the program? What would be the first thing you do in the first appointment? What would you want to do in the second appointment and the third appointment? This is the lovely Sharon Bimrose, a naturopath from Australia. She had already learned iridology as a part of her naturopathy. She said, Judith's course, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology, surpassed my previous training in structure, content, delivery, and support. Iridology has certainly reduced the time required for prioritizing a treatment plan. It has without a doubt been a huge game changer to my practice. She used to donate her time to create programs. She didn't get paid for that time. And when when I was done with her, she was no longer spending her own time creating programs. She could get them done while she was with her client, which saved her hours. So for those of you who are interested in a course, you've got a little bit of time. We're not in a big rush here, so I'm not doing a huge sales pitch. That was just the introduction. The next course starts on Thursday, September 9th. Registration will be opening in August. So, you know, if you're looking for a course, I want you to kind of bookmark this. And if you are thinking, yes, I love the way Judith teaches, and hang out with me every Thursday. We do these things every Thursday, right? Whether it's in the Facebook group or a webinar, we try to live stream it to both. Hang out with me, figure out that you love my teaching style, that you love what I'm teaching and how to use this. And then I'd love you to go over to iridology.education/course-info. And I'm sorry I don't have that in a format that I can actually paste it for you. iridology.education/course-info. And there you can get onto the wait list. Now, what is the wait list for? The wait list is for those who are highly interested in the program, to allow them to register or enroll in the program before we throw registration open to the rest of the world. People who are on this list will get an advanced webinar where before we open to the public, I'll do a private session just for the people on the advanced list to give them all the details of the course, everything for what's included in the course, what the tuition is, what support you get, how this course prepares you if you want to become certified with IPA. And that will be a very, very small group of people who get that advanced opportunity to enroll before the rest of the world hears about registration being open. So again, iridology.education/course-info. All right, brilliant. Now, I am not seeing any extra questions come in. So either that means I totally confused you or it means I did a good job. We don't know right now. Oh, LaDonna, thank you. So almost right, course-info. So on that last one, iridology.education/course-info. LaDonna, thanks for typing that in. If you wouldn't mind typing in the correction for me as well, that would be great. Wonder if I can actually type it in over here. Iridology, for our Facebook friends, education/course-info. Ta-da, there we go. Wonderful. Thanks so much, LaDonna. I really appreciate your help with that. That's marvelous. And you're very, very welcome. So that is all the information I have for you right now. I have loved being with you today. Thank you for playing with me in my sandbox and for interacting with me. It's been so good to spend this time with you. And I will hopefully see you again next Thursday. If you are not receiving email notifications of these, please PM your email address to me if you're on Facebook. I will add you to the list. If you are on the webinar, and I will automatically add you to the notification list for these Thursday morning webinars. And so, yeah, just stay in touch with me that way, and we'll make sure that you know what's happening and when it's happening so that you can get a little bit of a foundation, get your foot in the door before the course even begins in September. I look forward so much to seeing you again. Have a brilliant and blessed weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday. Bye for now.